The Schizophrenia Society of Ontario is sending a warning about cannabis. Regular use can lead to psychosis, especially in youth and those with a family history. Joining me now to explain is Dr. Robert Zepersky, who is a scientific advisor for the Society, and Eliass, who had firsthand experience with this issue. Thank you both for coming here today. I think a lot of people, when they hear this, their ears prick up and they take note because it's not something they've necessarily heard before. So, Doctor, who exactly is vulnerable and when and how?
Well, we don't exactly know who's vulnerable. It seems like all of us are vulnerable, but there are some people who seem to be at increased risk. So clearly people who have a family history of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder are at increased risk of becoming psychotic and developing schizophrenia as a result of cannabis use. Also people who are using it on a daily basis and people who are using very high potency forms of cannabis.
Okay. Eliass, you have firsthand experience with this. Talk to us about your experience.
Yeah, so my experience, I started using cannabis really early, and I started using cannabis pretty frequently pretty early too, and it went on for a long time, and my psychosis developed when I was in university actually, and it was really tough. Like I didn't know what was happening, and it was a very disconcerting experience because it happened in a way that it was kind of like a frog in boiling water type situation. I suddenly had all these symptoms, and I didn't really know what was happening. So it took me a while to figure out what was going on and to get onto a road to recovery.
Doctor, talk to me about how cannabis can change the brain and how it can lead to psychosis. Because honestly, I promise you there are people walking around the street saying, no, it's good, it's good for me, it's medicinal, it's got all these wonderful properties, and they never, I don't think we ever have the conversation about the potential negative sides.
So there are some things that we know for sure.
Yeah.
So we know from human experiments that if you give volunteers cannabis, they can develop hallucinations, they can develop paranoid delusions. So that's known for sure. We also know that people can develop an acute psychosis as a result of intoxication from cannabis. So people start to hear voices, they get very paranoid and delusional. That can go away sometimes within a few weeks, but people who develop an acute psychosis with cannabis have about a 50% chance of ending up with schizophrenia in the long run. How that actually happens, we're not clear about. There is some early research showing that there may be some brain changes. It does look like people who use cannabis earlier do have some cognitive changes with memory, attention, suggesting that likely cannabis is having some negative effects on the actual substance of the brain.
And Eliass, you've now taken this step. You're a peer counselor. Mm-hmm. When you go out and you share your story and you talk with young people, what's the feedback you get back from them?
They find it really normalizing because psychosis can be a really scary word, and a lot of people feel disconnected from the people in their lives because they don't really have people talking about it. It's not something that's in the mainstream conversation for the majority of the time, which is why I appreciate you having us on. And the feedback that I get a lot of the time is that it makes it seem like it's something manageable because they see me and I'm going through my life and I'm managing and I'm working, I'm at the Cleghorn Clinic, and I do talks for the Schizophrenia Society and talk about my experiences, and I'm able to kind of lead a meaningful life. And even that little piece of hope is something that's good enough for some people.
Doctor, we only have a few seconds left, but give us a few tips on what parents should be looking for if they sense that their child or their teen could be experiencing the negative effects of cannabis.
Well, the concern is if people are developing any paranoid experiences as a result of using cannabis, if they are having any strange experiences like hearing voices or having unusual visions, that's definitely a worrisome sign. Cannabis also can cause people to become dependent, meaning that cannabis can pretty much take over your life and become the focus of all your energies. And if people are becoming more withdrawn and losing interest in other activities, that's definitely a major concern.
Doctor, Eliass, thank you both for being here and sharing the story. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.